Hi, I'm Calum Di Lieto here with HR Grapevine, and we are in Shepherd's Bush interviewing Caroline Roberts from Fox International Channels. How are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good. So you had quite a unique opportunity really when you joined Fox, in that you basically started entirely from scratch. What kind of challenges did that create for you?
I was entering an organisation that wasn't big on HR. I was the first HR director that they'd had. And so having a greenfield site like that was a bit of a challenge because it was working out what the priorities were. And they're a small team of people. But also I had to really ascertain what was the priority for the business rather than the priority for me. Because it would have been very, very easy to go in there with a kind of off-the-shelf solution for everything. Right, you've got nothing, have some employee engagement, a bit of an employee survey, here's a learning and development plan, and that's it really. And you can pretty much do it, reading from a book. But I really had to put my ego at the door and start thinking what was right for the business and what were the areas that I had to focus on. And they weren't necessarily the areas that, first of all, I would have thought would have been the most important. But they weren't always the traditional HR areas that get HR people excited. We've all got our own areas of speciality. I probably focus more on learning and development. But suddenly I had to look at the real bare bones of things, policy, but also, very importantly, the metrics, which were lacking, certainly when I joined the company. And
I guess coming in as the first HR director and having a small team, did you have to create a bigger team? Did you have to do any sort of recruiting of other HR people? And what did you look for? I mean, if you have a blank slate, how do you know what kind of people you need and things like that?
One of the key things for me was to look at what I had, and we had somebody who was working as an HR manager in Spain, and they were certainly ready for a move, and I promoted them to a broader business partner role looking across Europe. But also I needed to make sure I could get other good people in. So one of my first hires was getting a resourcing manager and getting somebody who I could also grow into other roles as an HR assistant. And then we moved on to other roles such as other business partners locally and a reward manager as well. But in Fox in particular, it's very, very entrepreneurial. It was run very much like a start-up, and they don't want to lose that kind of sense. And there's a lot of talk now about people being entrepreneurs. So I needed people who had strong HR knowledge, not necessarily an HR background, but could be very flexible and could embrace the fact that the deadlines might change, the pressures might change, and could really communicate a message. There's a lot of me talking about winning hearts and minds of people. It might be the first HR people that the business had come in contact with. So they had to be people who were very articulate. They had to be hardworking because it's certainly that kind of culture. But would be able to take the rough with the smooth, view a sudden change of plans as an opportunity, and also be on that journey with me. And I think that takes quite a unique skill set.
When you, I guess, have to bring in these new people and still maintain the culture, how do you manage to, keep these or create these culture ambassadors, as it were, but bring loads of new people in? Because obviously, when you've got all these new people, you kind of have to teach them their culture and then get them to teach other people. So was that a bit of a challenge for you?
It is. I think that you have to maintain the integrity of the recruitment process and have very robust systems of doing that. Being very honest at the interview stage, and indeed when you're briefing agencies as well, because I'm sure that we've all been approached by people with jobs in the past, and they say it's going to be this wonderful, amazing role, with full autonomy, and in fact, you're doing something completely different. I don't think that serves anybody. So being really honest up front, and also where we had some hard to fill roles, actually starting to use psychometrics, which it was quite scary for the business that we were going to introduce this. I'd never had psychometrics before. But through having good people administering that and being able to give really solid feedback, the business felt very involved. So the people doing the psychometric testing, for example, they'd have a conversation with me and the recruitment manager, but they'd have a conversation with the hiring manager. And then you could really start to brainstorm, what would your ideal person look like? What kind of challenges would they have on a daily basis? What would success look like? And then you're really getting buy-in from the business, which was absolutely critical.
Well, that's the other thing, is obviously being almost a new function, as it were, and it's difficult for HR in general, but to justify your actions and show a return on investment, I guess I can imagine was quite difficult for you. How did you overcome the sort of ROI aspects of things?
I think there are two aspects to that. I mean, first of all, there's the level of self-examination that can be quite unpleasant to think, why am I here? I'm an overhead. If this were my own business, why would I be paying me? What would I be doing that's different, that is actually adding some value? So taking a long, hard look at everything you do. And our CEO talks about costs. Are they an investment or an expense? And so really examining if you're doing something, if you are going to produce something that is a true investment. Also, we've had a fresh look at metrics as well. That's something that's become increasingly important, and I know that a lot of people in HR have been talking about the use of data. And it's kind of comes full circle, because I remember a few years ago there was quite a lot of MI going on. Then it seemed to become a bit less tangible. Now actually coming back to useful information and useful dashboards. And we're actually working at the moment reversioning what little information that we had been reporting on and making it relevant for the business. Because there can be a lot of data and you can absolutely swamp people with data. And then you get almost that data blindness. So we're looking at fresh dashboards and then drawing the linkage, using them to tell the story back to the business. For instance, if you're looking at something like attrition rates, why are you looking at attrition rates? Is it because there's an issue with leadership? It could be that there are poor managers, so that's something we need to address. Are we just purely looking at the cost of getting new hires? Is there something wrong in the way that we're recruiting people? So all these things, it's very much joined up to all the initiatives that we do and using that data to actually serve it and be something that's useful and quick and easy to understand.
And you said that, I guess, one of your personal passions is learning and development and that kind of thing. Obviously, you've been in your role for a while now, so you've got past maybe the initial recruitment and the building, and maybe now you have the opportunity to embrace maybe the L&D side of things. So is that true? And if so, what are you doing on that side?
Well, one of the things that we need to look at is a proper portfolio of line management training, because we want to empower managers, but truly empower them. It's not just about dumping work onto people, but to demystify HR processes and how you run your business more effectively. With the the pressure on headcount is increasing all the time. So you want to get better people working smarter, and you really want to maximise the people that you've got. So enabling them to manage better is absolutely critical. And there's some basic processes that you can take for granted if you work in a big organisation with a fantastic learning and development function. When I was at the BBC, training was amazing, absolutely amazing. And it was easy to take that for granted. But other companies aren't always that fortunate to have that kind of resource. So looking at the things such as giving appraisals, how do you do a good appraisal? Looking at what people do and how they do it. And giving the people skills so that they won't be scared, that it will be an opportunity to really get something of benefit. So looking at that, also looking to the future with our future leaders and our future talent. So we're looking at doing some work on next generation leaders and having a programme for them. But also some very sort of tangible business related training, such as in negotiation skills. And there's an easy ROI there.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if everybody that was doing a negotiation was able to perform 1% better, whatever 1% is. But it's still, a good thing to imagine when you're thinking about this. How much revenue would that generate? So we're looking at things like that, but also, we're in the world of television. So some work on creativity, creative brainstorming and innovation, because that's what's going to drive us in the future and make us even more competitive.
And I say looking towards the future then really, what other initiatives do you want to introduce? I mean, I guess when you've got a blank slate, you can't really throw everything into the mix at the same time, so I imagine you had to prioritise things, and going forward now with a little bit more of a steady foundation, what are you hoping to get the ball rolling on going forward?
I think you make a really valid point there about you can't do everything, and sometimes you're just itching to do everything all at once, and that's a real mistake. So I think first of all, thinking through the employee life cycle, and indeed the manager's life cycle of having employees, and thinking about what interventions are really needed. For instance, with our induction, it needed some work. There wasn't much that was formal. So we're just at the final stages of making an online induction, which is a framework that can be used actually across the world. I'm always keen on maximising everything that I do. If it's training, is it something that can easily be translated into other markets? Someone the other day was talking about being pointlessly global and hopelessly local. And I don't want to do big central HR initiatives that won't translate to other places. So there's got to be that level of flexibility so that the good people you have got in place can use them appropriately. So it's looking at the employee life cycle. It's getting some more of the frameworks in place. We've just completed the first stage of a big reward project where we're actually bringing in job levelling, job families, and organising things there. We want to take that a stage forward with our reward strategy and linking performance to bonus. Again, there's a big amount of training that goes with that. If you start talking about measuring performance in a fiscal manner, are we talking about competencies or not? How do you explain competencies to people? So I think at each stage here, as we're looking on the employee life cycle, we have to think, what's the initiative that will drive the business forward, and what training and support do we need to give to that? And they're absolutely intrinsically linked. And
I guess, Fox International Channels touches on it, and as you said, you've pulled in talent from Spain in the initial process, and you try to create things that are on a global scale. How else do you maybe use that international reach to your advantage in the things that you do?
I'm very lucky because I've got HR people now across Europe, and I'm able to take in many different viewpoints. I think there's a difference from working with people from around the world when you're all based in the same place to when you're working with people and they're based all over Europe and Africa as well. It's informing a lot of my thinking, but in a very visceral way. For instance, thinking about reward strategies and retention. What retains somebody who's sitting in Oslo is going to be completely different as to what is important for somebody sitting in Johannesburg or in Athens, for example. So I think using the international knowledge that we've got, sharing that best practice, but also you do realise that a lot of the things, people are people and they do want the same kind of things. And I think that's very important to remember with the different generations as well, is that people do want to have the same opportunities. And just because someone's 21 doesn't mean that they don't want job security and the opportunities that when someone of 51 would have as well, or have had that same kind of opportunities. So I'm also trying to bring some of that back, sponsoring people through training courses and things like that, to bring back some of the opportunities that we may have lost in the past as well. But I think that having a global workforce does give you that competitive edge, very definitely. And it's able to inform our business strategy and very much take the best from all over the world.
Brilliant. Well, it sounds like you've had an adventure, and there's still more adventures to come in the HR function at Fox. So that's really exciting. Thank you for speaking with us, and we look forward to seeing how things progress in the future.
Thank you.